Hello, welcome to our TED Talk class. And today we will speak about Asia, raise, how and when. And we have a short TED Talk. Gerard, would you like to retell us the gist, the story?
Yes. The speaker studied in India, and he realized when he was young, he realized that the Indian students were better than him. He was from Sweden. During the speech, he shows us a graphic where we can see the income of people starting in I think in 1848 for different countries, India, China, America, and the United Kingdom, and Japan. And we are seeing in the graphic that India and China are growing, and he foresaw that into 2048 they will catch up with America and the UK. I think the point, it's a little bit weird. There's not much information in this speech, only an optimistic view of Asia catching up Europe and America.
But he provided a nice graph.
Graphs are useful to say what happened in the past, but they are not useful to say what will happen in the future.
Well, I have to agree, but but sometimes we have to predict on these graphs because we don't have anything else. So we don't have a choice. So we build this graph and trying to interpolate that to understand what will happen in the future. Maybe we fail in our prediction, maybe not, but at least we try it. So, Tijeli, do you want to add?
Well, I was going to say, if you look at that graph, the thing that puzzles me about the graph is that it shows India and China increasing faster than Britain and the US ever increased in our entire history. So I'm trying to figure out why we couldn't increase that fast with all of our infrastructure, industry, and technology, and they're coming from behind and they can suddenly just skyrocket straight up. I don't know if that makes sense to me or not. Maybe it's just because of the size of their population.
Maybe because they work hard. I think that we don't work hard anymore for long years.
That is true.
We have that unions that protects us of work. We have that social security and many things. And each time when I meet some Asian guy, I think that I can see that they work harder. It's obvious. I saw that in Vietnam. They work from early morning to sunset. I forgot the word for that.
Yeah,
for the night.
I don't know if they work smart, but they work hard.
Right. It's possible.
Yeah.
But graphs show us that somehow it's work for them.
Yeah.
So Lynn, please tell us why Asian people work so hard.
I think poor countries are easier to improve because they just have more areas to improve than already developed nations. When you have
Go on, please.
When you have a lower baseline, it's easier to improve than from a high baseline, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Well, so there are a lot of questions to these graphs provided by speaker. We don't know exactly how it was built. We don't understand what's the inflation somehow what's the graph adjusted to inflation, and how they compare these dollars to different countries. It's because $100 in Vietnam and in US it's two different amount, right? And when you put it on one graph, it's something strange. So it must be, I don't know a word for that. Normalize it maybe.
Normalize, yeah.
So they have to be some normalize it in some way, and we don't know was speaker has speaker done it or not.
Yeah.
Had speaker done it or not. But from my point of view, I can see that. I can see that Asian tigers are grown up. We have a lot of goods from them, right? We have a lot of story. We can see this on TV. And when Asian people work here in my town, when I can see them, they work hard. I see, and they grown up. They start, for instance, China community started from one little market, and now it's huge. And it took like 1 year.
Wow.
Lynn, please.
I think it's easier to understand China's improvement because of its economy. I mean, the goods from China are imported to many countries, and China has cheap labor, so their economy is easier to improve. I don't know about India.
Gerard, please.
I wanted to explain you why Asia is growing more than developed countries, but it's always the same. The reason is the same. When you are in a low position and you are growing up, is always more than developed countries, because it's like, I think there is a saturation point. Developed countries is difficult to improve more the economy, but countries who are in which low position, so they always increase in a bigger percentage. Sometimes happen that with Spain, because Spain is a lower position than most countries in Europe. So it looks like, okay, Spain is growing more than, the northern countries, but that's not such a good news, because it was in a lower position before.
It's like in science. If you have a big temperature difference, the heat transfers faster. If you have a big pressure difference, the air moves quicker. So when you have a big economy difference, the driving force to bring them together is more. Yeah.
I think Gerard is right about this saturation point, because when you in a poor country, when you're a poor man personally, you have a lot of motivation to work hard, a lot. You're starting to do that, but when you have enough, it's hard to do the next step, to take a little bit more, because you think I have enough already. I know it by myself. When I was a student, I was working hard for any money. Now I'm starting to think, is it worth it or not? Maybe I can just play poker with my friends. So something like that. I think it's happened with the whole country in general. If US already a rich country, if many people feel safe and can afford many things, what's the reason to go forward? What is the motivation? They can relax, right?
Yeah.
But what is better for people, not for countries, but for people? I thinking about that. I was thinking about that in Vietnam. I think that they look fantastic how they work, but I don't want to be on their place. I want to be a lazy tourist from US and use these goods, but not to produce them.
Yeah.
So if someone will say you that let's work harder and our country will grow faster than China, would you like that?
And what's the point of working, 12 hours a day and all? 6 days a week like some Chinese do, to make a lot of money. But what is the point? You don't have a life. If you are working and only working, you don't have time to enjoy your short life. There must be a balance between money and welfare and, and free time, having free time to do what you like to do.
Right. When we're speaking about working hard, we always thinking about some physical job, right? But it's a trap. It's not always so. I know many people in India who has a degree of professor in young age, and I know many unique industry in China that use many science. And some Russian scientists go to the China because it's the only place on the world where this investigation exists. So sometimes working hard not only about physical work. What do you think? Is it possible that these countries take our science too, not only labor production, something like this? Is it possible that China will be a science center in the world of the world? Jart, what do you think?
What do you do? Maybe are you saying that in China they don't have moral claims to do some investigations like genetics and all this stuff?
Yeah.
That's an advantage for them because they can grow. Their science can grow up more than ours.
Right. They have a different moral from our point of view. And I read about some, how we call it, some investigations, and they try to modify genes for not born children. And they claim it that they improved their future life significantly because they found babies, not born babies, who has some disease, and they destroy the disease before the child was born. But I'm pretty sure that no one will allow that in Russia for next, I don't know, decades, years, centuries.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
But things may change, Ivan. Sometimes you don't realize, but there is a big change. Like the communism finished abruptly, and nobody didn't expect that. So change can happen.
Yeah. Okay, I can believe that, but I'm sure that we will not in the head of the progress because we don't do this. And when it started, China will already have a technology, experience, some data about how to do such. I don't know what is it, operation, some procedures, but we are not. We're not ready.
Another reason China's advanced so quickly is they've stolen our technology. They didn't have to work for it like we did. They just do computer espionage, steal our technology, and catch up with us quickly. That's another reason this is happening.
Right. So they just refuse copyright, right? And it's interesting story. I heard many such stories because in Russia industry doesn't exist. I mean that industry when you can buy something in China. So many people just make a paper how to produce something and then send it to China and receive goods back. And each time when you do this, Chinese start to produce your things behalf themselves. They don't care for this copyright. So if you show some blueprint to them, it's already spread it up.
Yeah.
But is it bad for humanity, for humankind in general? What do you think? Sometimes I think that copyright is a new slavery.
Yeah. I think it restricts human advancement when you say only one guy can do something. I don't like that myself. But
So copyright can protect one company, maybe one corporation, something else. But for humankind, I think it's not useful because let them produce all these goods, and we will have to invent new one, and it will urge the progress, something like this. Jart, agree? Disagree?
Yeah, some companies can monopolize something important, some medicines, and they are very expensive because they want to keep those medicines expensive. And many people are dying because of that.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, they have their own arguments, their own lists why copyright is useful. Money. They have to protect the investments. They invest to the science, and they need to return money back, as they said. But I don't care if it's good for humankind. So we know. But what about India? I never heard about copyright in India, like in China case. Have you heard something? Do they protect things by copyright or not? Sadly, we don't have Vasants today. No one to ask.
We need Vasants.
Yes.
I haven't heard about counterfeit goods coming from India, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
China, we hear about it all the time.
So who else? Japan, right? Who else? Vietnam. Who are those Asian tigers?
Now, Japan's an interesting case. After World War II, Japan was pretty much ruined. And America helped them get economic aid, and they worked hard, and they became an industrial giant, as we all know. But now what's happened is what happened back then was the government and the people and the companies made a deal. The government said, we need the people to work really, really hard so we can rebuild our country. In return, our companies promise that you will always have a job for life and you'll never have to worry about work. So the government and the people kind of made a deal of working hard for the company and loyalty. You're going to have a job for life. So you never have to worry about work again if you work hard for the company. So that model worked well for a while, and Japan got very, very good. But now what's happened is the companies and the people, that deal's not working so well anymore because the people are continuing to work really, really hard. And if they don't, the company gets rid of them. So now that deal is broken. But what's happening is the people are working so hard, they don't have time for romance and marriage and babies. And their population and their mental well-being, in my opinion, has been going down every year. So they're having a trouble now breaking that habit of working really, really hard for the company. And their society's slowly being destroyed, I think. What are your comments on that, Gerard?
No, I was thinking about Korea, another important country growing. I think it's the third country of Asia. Yes, I agree that in Japan they are too obsessed with working, and they don't have a life. They don't enjoy their lives.
Yeah, and their population's going down every year, and they don't have immigration to build it back up. So they're going to be in trouble if they don't do something.
Yes, definitely immigration is not a problem for them.
Right.
At least one good thing in Japan, right?
Yes.
Okay, who else? Lin, tell us more about Asian region. Which country are good in growing up? Lin, can you?
Yes.
Please
I
tell
was
us.
thinking- Yeah.
Sorry,
I
go on.
can. Yeah. I can only think of China, India, and Japan because countries in Asia. I don't think Vietnam is that much powerful.
No, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with Charlie in Japan. Japanese people are like robots, and they are increasing suicide rates, even for students. It's not a good news.
What when I talked about Vietnam, I didn't mean that it's powerful, but I mean that it's growing up. You know, they grow their population very, very big. From, if I'm right, I can forget some numbers, but it's like from 90 millions to 150 millions now in a 10 years. So it's grown up, and they said that they produce many cheap goods like clothes, which China was used to produce. So now that China industry goes to Vietnam because of cheap how we call it
Labor,
cheap labor. Because of cheap labor, so as China raise their salaries, the industry goes to Vietnam.
Yeah.
So they about to repeat the way of China, I think so.
Yeah.
a lot of population, cheap labor, a lot of goods, a lot of industry looks the same for me. So maybe on this we will see on this graph in the future. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go to the questions. We have some. Let's talk about these graphs. You know, I shared a funny picture which I always share when we talk about interpolation, and it's called 1001 Days of History. let me try to share maybe. Oh, can you see on the Padlet? It's about Turkey. Turkey before and after Thanksgiving. This one. Okay. Let me screen share. Can you see that?
You're saying their history starts again every 1,000 days?
I think it is a story about extrapolation when we're trying to use math and apply it to history, because something always happen. As for Turkey, it's happened Thanksgiving. For us, always happen some diseases, some wars, some economical disaster, some crises. What else? Government instability.
Yeah.
At least in Russian history, it happens every 5 years at max.
Yeah, it's like Turkey, you know, that they've had a change of government. 50,000 people lost their jobs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Complete change in their economy.
Yes, but if you look on this graph, we can see that first 1,000 days it's growing up constantly. Everything goes good. Everything going better every day, and we can predict that it will be good in the next day. But then Thanksgiving happen and everything goes down. So it's about extrapolation. When this guy wrote the graph in the talk, I was thinking about this example. Okay, Lynn, do you have a question?
Yeah, I don't really understand the graph. What is the variable? It is the number of turkeys or the price of a turkey, and
For the number of turkeys, well, the turkeys accumulated knowledge. But every year we kill all the turkeys. So every year, everything they've accumulated in their history goes back to zero because we kill all the turkeys that have this accumulated knowledge every year. So they restart, right? They restart every year. They lose all their history because we kill them all. We eat them.
Why after 1,000 days, not 365?
For turkeys, it would be 365 days. For turkeys, it would be 1 year.
But I think that this vertical X is the weight of the turkey. So it's growing up, and then...
Oh, that might be, yeah.
Yeah, it's more possible.
Yeah, that might be, yeah. We eat them when they're 3 years old. Okay.
So
please?
Does it take 100 days to grow up a turkey? Is it that?
I don't know.
Exactly. but it's it's very famous example. So I think it's like that, because when I studied math, they always provide this example in the books. Like a danger of extrapolation when you see that everything is fine. And when you go with any historical data to the scientists, they can produce strange graphics. For instance, yesterday, just an example, one girl yesterday has 0 husbands. Nowadays, she has 1 husband. How many husbands she will have tomorrow? And any scientists say you 2, because it's very logical extrapolation. But it doesn't happen. It's all about, I don't know word for that, but we call it that something like wrong abstraction, or something like this. When the abstraction does not fit the real life.
No correlation, maybe no correlation.
Correlation. I don't know is it a word or not, but in IT we call that leaked or leak abstraction, something like that. When in general it looks like in a real world, but something goes wrong. So it's like a ship with a leak. In general it looks like a ship, but a small detail ruin all.
Leaking memory or something.
Yes, something like that. So what do you think? What can is it possible that this interpolation, this extrapolation of the author's TED Talk author's graph can I can say that? So I mean, is it possible that those graphs provided in TED Talks will be like that? Leaked wrong abstraction, because something always happen. What can happen? Lynn. He provided a few examples. Can you remember anything?
Well, he mentioned the Opium Wars and independence.
So wars, diseases, something. It's an obvious example when the graphs is changed drastically, right?
Yeah.
And because of the
go ahead.
And because of all this tension in the world, I think we should avoid something. Because and the speaker asked us, what do you think the old old countries who are leaders, what to expect from them, how they will protect their leadership? And I don't understand really this point. Why should they protect it? Jart, what do you think? Why?
I don't understand your question. Why should they protect their leadership?
Yes, it was like that. What they will do to defend their leadership?
Do you mean countries like China?
Countries like England, United Kingdom, or US.
He's talking about the shift of power from the West to Asia, Gerard. Will the Western countries do something to strike down the Asian leader countries to maintain the world dominance?
Yes. So my question generally is about that. Why it's dangerous for current leaders to have a grown-up leader, to have a grown leaders? Why it's dangerous for them? So teacher Lee mentioned one. It's a shift of power, right? It's an obvious one. Because someone is economically has economical power, maybe the military power will come then, right? After economics. What else? Why it's dangerous for other leaders?
In my opinion, I think they become too proud of their status, and they don't want to give up on that power.
So they just want to keep this status quo, right?
Yeah.
Because of honor.
Yeah, it depends. Let's take an example. What if China were to become the world's superpower? Now, they do things different than the U.S. China always makes sure that China wins in any negotiation. China wants to take over the South China Sea, the East China Sea. China always wants to win. And I think if they were the only superpower in the world, they would do things a lot different. They would bully the world probably more than the U.S. is considered to be a bully. You agree?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, but I was thinking another thing about China. What about if communism collapses in China like it happened in the Soviet Union? I think things will change a lot.
That's possible, yeah. It could be chaos.
Okay. Let me try to answer both questions. First of all, I think changing the world leader, it's obviously not an easy task, not an easy thing for everyone, because it's new rules and you have to adapt, and all previous alliances doesn't mean nothing. And what about communism? I think that it's ruined already. All my China's contacts, at least, say that the communism is just a picture. It just doesn't exist anymore. So, and speaker provided us example about two cats. Can you remember that? How was it? Gerard, can you say about these two cats?
No, about communism, yes. Maybe it's not communism what they have in China, but it has the words of communism, that it's sort of dictatorship, in the power. There's a small amount of people ruling the country. It's the worst thing about communism, and they keep that. Still, they keep that.
So they have power in the same hands for a long time, right?
That's it.
Yes, but what about United Kingdom then? I have heard that the Queen is still the same for a long time.
She has no power.
But it's depends of point of view. I hear that can declare war to any country. It's some power, in my opinion. But okay, it's mostly a joke. but I think that even Western country, many Western countries have almost the same people in the government for a long time. They are changing, but the core is the same. Such events like Trump is seldom. Okay, so what else? So again, back to the questions. Why leaders should defend their positions? So obviously it's power, which came after economics. Obviously, what else? I can think about another example. When Russia was very poor, all our scientists just don't want to work there. They go to the leaders country, I mean, because you don't have opportunity here. So for United Kingdom, for instance, for America, it was very profitable situation when you don't need to teach them, but you have them already taught and ready to work. So if you're a leader, people want to go in your country, and you can choose whom to get, right? not just immigrants for simple work, but scientists, engineers, and so on. So just imagine for a second that China is the best place for IT people. All of them go from California to the China. It will be a collapse for America, right? So it's another example. What else? What can you think about? So the conspiracy theory tell us that there is a reason why the leaders trying to export instability to other countries. Some paranoids always say that they need to ruin other countries to get the best people from them. The same idea. If you ruin, I don't know, just for instance, if you ruin Russia for some reason, you will get all the scientists, all the IT people for free. All Russian hackers go to the Silicon Valley in one day. Exactly. Okay. So what else? Lin's questions. Are his predictions made in 2000? I forgot numbers. Gerard, please.
2014. Right,
I wanted to answer Lee's question. Will global warming melt the ice? Because I read something surprising. So Donald Trump now upsets global warming, and we human we are contributing to global warming. But he said that America doesn't need to do such a big effort, you know. But
Right.
he says that he's worried with global warming. That's some improvement with his former opinion.
Well, I keep reading in the internet, if I can believe it, that the Arctic ice is cracking open and melting, and if these big cracks result in the ice sliding into the ocean, and the ice floats to a warmer place and melts, it sounds to me like we're seeing global warming happen right now. To me, there's no doubt, but some people still say it's not really a big deal, so I don't know who to believe. But if we had global warming and the ocean levels rose and flooded the farmland on the coast and big cities on the coast, that could greatly shift the power. You know, if China's coastal cities flooded, that's a lot of their economy. If Shanghai went underwater, that's a big economical blow to China, you know.
Right. The most developed cities and industrial districts are on the coastline, so the rise of water will destroy all that. Jart, you know a lot about this global warming. How much can be this rise?
How much what?
How much can be this water rise if all the Arctic ice will be melted?
I don't know, many meters, but it's a few meters. It's a lot, because you know, you think about Netherlands. They have walls on the water to protect their land. You know, their land is under the sea level, so that would be a disaster. But not only the levels rising, but the temperatures, you know, and the desertization and all this stuff. Countries that are close to the desert, they are feeling more global warming. You are live in a cold place, so you are not feeling anything. So that's normal. You can change that. Global warming doesn't affect you. But I think we are all interrelated. It's like when you said about countries, you know, trying to get down other countries. Everything is interrelated. You can see that in the stock market. There's a problem in a far away country, and the stock market gets affected.
Yeah,
Yes,
crazy.
I know many examples. Of that. You know, when some massive water flood was in Taiwan, all the computers grow up in the price in all the world, in the whole world, because they produce something unique for personal computers, something like that. But you know, I know that you heard a lot of skeptics about global warming from me. And there is a reason about that. When everyone speak about global warming, in my place we have global colding. You know, every year it's getting more cold and cold. So it's hard not to be skeptic about that.
Colder and colder.
So we call that climate change. We cannot call it that global warming, because you know, now it's June and we had a snow yesterday. It's hard to believe in global warming in that situation.
Wow.
But Ivan, you need to look at the big picture, like the big picture, not your specific picture.
Believe me, it's hard, you know. Believe me, it's hard. When you're in snow, it's hard to believe that someone somewhere suffer from the hot very much. You always think, let's change for a day, you know, and you will not suffer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this global warming is one of the risks the speaker mentioned, right? And these countries, Asian countries, are the most open to this risk, right? Lynn, tell us about global. Gerard, please.
No, I wanted to say another problem I see that he didn't mention is overpopulation. I think that's a big problem, and the speaker didn't mention it.
But we don't know, is it problem or is it the key of the success? Maybe because there are so many people, they produce so much.
Yeah, but no, saturation point. The resources of Earth, our planet, are not unlimited.
But I think we have enough food now. No, they can manage it somehow. Usually.
I've read articles that say that the oceans are getting fished out. We're taking too many fish from the ocean, and the ocean's got less and less fish life. If that continues, Japan in particular, Japan and China use these huge ships to fish, and Vietnam to some extent. But if we overfish the oceans, let's assume that all the ocean life were to die, basically. How would that affect countries like Japan and China? Would there be mass starvation? Would that drive a war to take over land for more farming area? I don't know.
But it's obvious. It's obvious. If their population don't have enough food, what they can to do? What they can do? They will start some grab some resources, right?
Well, what's Venezuela doing? I don't understand how Venezuela is existing. They're not doing anything. They're just starving to death and doing nothing. I don't understand it. I don't know. But yeah, China or Japan would probably start another war to feed their people if it came to that.
Yes, I think so. I think there is no choice, when it's be a real problem. But I think I read some articles in the internet that China bought a lot of bought a lot of countries, we can say it, in Africa, for instance. The Ethiopia almost belonged to China. Everything belonged to Chinese in Ethiopia. And the same in Africa. The same it's the most of the Africa. Every land, every industry belongs to China. So they prepared some land to expand.
Yeah, good point.
But it's only for China, not for Japan, not for India, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Lynn, what do you think about overpopulation? Is it a problem or it's a good thing to grow?
Well, I think unchecked population growth is a problem because we may not have enough food in the long future. But I think we have enough food for now. It's not a problem for now.
For now, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I think that I live in a very special place because overpopulation is not a problem for us too. We have an underpopulation and we always struggle with that. We don't need enough people. We don't have enough people.
Yeah.
So we can just borrow some Chinese people for us if it solves the problem. Okay, so another questions. So Lynn asked, how likely is a war to break out is if Asia gained power? We tried to discuss it from different points of view. What do you think, Lynn? Is war likely?
In my personal opinion, I don't think it's very possible because cost of a war is so much that the governments will consider starting a war, I think.
Jart, what do you think about war?
I think we don't need to do wars anymore. The wars are economic wars, Economy is what is important nowadays.
Yeah.
So what's the point of having a war with a country that's growing up more than us? That's not a problem. We should do other things to improve our growth, but not wars.
Let's look at it from another point of view. As teacher Lee said, that switching the center of power to the China may have a lot of consequences for the whole world, right? And what if we can see that it will happen in a few next years? Can it provoke a war from another leaders, current leaders, or something like that, just to stop China? I think it's very possible, from my opinion. Kishuli, what do you think?
I think China is much more of a bully than the U.S. was in the past. I think. I don't know because I'm not on the receiving end of America's political influence. But China, I think China's going to. It's just like the South China Sea. China's putting military islands there. They're starting to question aircraft flying over their sea. I think China's going to take over more and more ocean space because it's kind of up for grabs and they can get away with it. And if the smaller countries like Philippines, Japan, Vietnam, if they don't resist, China's going to take over a large part of the ocean and the airspace. And I think I don't think a war will break out because those countries are too small to fight back. But I think that China would greatly extend their influence in Asia without someone to restrain them.
Mm-hmm.
I think China economy will collapse because they are going up a lot because the wages are low, the salaries are low. They take advantage of that. But when the workers have the same levels or close levels to ours, they won't have this power of being the world's factory. That's the reason why they have this economic power. But once they reach our level, I think they're going to collapse or get stagnant.
Another thing to think about is China is not developing equally. You've got most of the countries very, very, very poor. Only the big industrial centers, Beijing, Shanghai, places like that, only those are getting richer and richer. The rest of the country is being left behind. So eventually the inequity might cause problems. Automation, if they automate and people lose their jobs, how are they going to keep those people happy,
Mm-hmm. That's a risk too. Well, the TED Talk was made 3 years ago. What do you think? Is anything changed for these 3 years? For this recent 3 years? If we can ask speaker today, will he change the prognosis or not? What do you think, Gerard?
I think this TED Talk was made in 2009, so 8 years ago. 8.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know the graphic. How would be the graphic nowadays? But I don't believe in 2048 China and India will catch up with us. Many things can happen during this time.
So, but I can't I cannot say that trend was changed for these 8 years. For me, it's the same thing. China is growing up, India is growing up, and developed country, I don't know, in some crisis from my point of view. I'm not sure if we call that crisis, but they not developing so much. In stagnation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, looks like for these 8 years, the prognosis was exactly the truth.
But this graphic is deceiving because they are in a lower position and America and the UK are in the saturation point, close to the saturation point. They can improve more. So it looks like China and India are going up a lot, but that's because they are in a low position.
Mm-hmm. It's a different question, yes, about normalization the graphic, because I don't understand how that made. Because of currency value, because of inflation and everything, so it's tricky. I understand.
The only technology changes I see going on right now is driverless cars and AIs being developed, but I'm not sure how that's going to affect the world's economies yet.
And another important thing, China and India, they have a lot of poor people. Do you believe that after 20, 30 years after, those poor people will be normal people, average people? I don't think so. That doesn't change.
Right. I have seen many farmers in Vietnam, and they live in such circumstances that it's impossible to believe that someone will live so in Russia, and it will take a lot of time and efforts and money to bring them to the same level. And it sounds unreal for me. I don't know how it's, but what sounds unreal for us now, somehow solve it in China, in many other countries. I mean, not solve it completely, but is solving step by step. So maybe at some point they will solve that too. Okay, let's see something else. What do you think? Why? So on this graph provided by speaker, we have a life expectancy and money earning, right? Something like this, 2 axes. Do you think that's related or not, and why? Lynn, what do you think? Is life expectancy hardly wired to money?
Yeah, I think it's related because if you have more money, you can afford healthcare, and if your country is rich, the government can afford to give proper health services. So more money is roughly correlated to better health.
But let me provide a counter example. For instance, Cuba, they all poor, extremely poor people, but they have good medicine because it's donated by government. It's government spent a lot of money to this medicine, so they are healthy but poor. It's a counter example. Do you agree, Gerard?
Yes, I agree. And they, like teacher Lee said, in America, medical care it's very, very expensive, and that's the problem. So poor people doesn't have the same opportunities that wealthy or middle people.
Yeah.
So if that thing's not such hardly wired, what is better for country in general? I think is there some compromise, or it can be very healthy country can be happy without money or not? So people, I don't know. Let me from point of view of tourists. When tourists go to the Cuba and return back to Russia, they all said that all the Cuban people just crazy because they are happy. They dance all the time. They have nothing, but they happy. It's impossible to understand.
The weather.
It's just an example.
The climate, I think.
So one thing you got to think about is if a country's people live longer, they're going to have more old people. So their average age is going to shift to older people. Their working population is going to get smaller. The old people usually are poor health and need more medical care, and they become a drain on the economy. So to have longer life without money to correspond to that could be a problem. They kind of have to go up together. The U.S. has never been the best health care the longest life in the world. Even though we may have the best health care, we've never had the longest life of all the other countries. Other countries have had longer lives than us, even though we got more money and more health care. So why, I'm not sure, but.
We're almost out of time. So last question. General one. Do you believe that Asia will be a new leader? How to lead new power center in the world? Lynn, what do you think?
I didn't cut the question.
The question is, do you agree with the speaker that maybe not in next 5 years, not in next 10 years, but in long perspective, the Asia will rule the world, will will be the best economically country?
Is anything can happen during the interval. And according to the current trend, it is possible. Yeah, according to the speaker.
Mhm. But what do you think? Do you
Anything
believe
is
in that?
possible.
Okay. So, Gerard, as I get, you don't agree, right? Something will happen.
But Asia, we shouldn't talk about Asia. Maybe China and India, because like like the American continent, the US are on the top, but southern countries are in a lower position. So I think there is no sense talking about Asia. There are so different countries, the Middle East. There are different countries, maybe India and China, but we don't know what could happen in China. Some crisis can blow up.
Right? Teacher Lee?
I think what we're seeing right now, it depends on governments. Trump is not a world policeman. He wants to take care of America first. So if he pulls back from NATO, pulls back from all these climate change treaties or meetings and all this other stuff, then it's like Germany said, Europe's on its own. So the EU's got to take care of itself. I don't think the EU's capable of leading the world. They just don't have that mentality. They don't care. I don't know. Russia and China are going to move in and start leading all these efforts that we are pulling back from. So I think because we're pulling back, China and Russia are going to fill that void and have more influence. Now, Russia doesn't seem to be that excited about being the world's policeman either, but I think China would be happy to be the world's policeman and bully everybody and maintain the order. So I could see it happening if the U.S. pulls back and China's allowed to use their money to just continue expanding their influence everywhere.
Yes, and again, America is in a good position, because of ocean between China and America.
Yeah, it's your problem, Europe.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's our problem. So thank you very much for coming. It was a nice discussion. And see you tomorrow.
See you
Yes,
tomorrow.
on the movie class.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.